Hey guys, Trev here from SpineWise. Today I want to talk to you about digestion and about some really simple eating tactics that may help you if you're having digestive issues, whether it be bloating, irritable bowel syndrome, any of these type of situations. Like always guys, if you love our information, please like and subscribe to our sites. It's the easiest way we have of getting information out to people nowadays and makes us feel like all this is worthwhile. So please comment and share as well. Always great to know that we are interacting with you guys and it's not just me talking to myself here too. Alright, so let's talk about digestion and let's break it down into a few little simple steps, because most of us realize that food comes in and food goes out eventually, but we don't really understand the basics of how all that works. So I'm going to run through a bit of an understanding of how these things works and why you should be chewing and why you shouldn't be chewing and when and how. And I'll give you a few tips, especially if you're suffering with bloating towards the end. If you hang around, I'll give you a few tips on how you can potentially resolve your bloating issues as well. Alright, so we start with the human body here. What we understand is that digestion starts in the mouth. Okay, we've all been told chew your food 64 times, all that kind of stuff, but is that really the truth? So what we know is the digestion that occurs in the mouth in here really is all about mixing saliva with the food, and that's all about the substance known as salivary amylase, and this is all about carbohydrate digestion. So when we start talking about the mouth, really what we're talking about is carbohydrate. That's the big thing that we're really talking about from there. So protein digestion doesn't really commence in the mouth, doesn't really have anything to do with the mouth in any way, shape or form, other than making pieces small enough to get down into the gut and to make it easier and safer to consume. But when it comes to carbohydrate then, what we really need to understand is it's really important that we mix that saliva into the carbohydrate in order to initiate that digestive process. As we work our way down through the esophagus, now we get into the stomach, which is our second real step of digestion. And we start talking about stomach function. This is all about hydrochloric acid, all about stomach acid. And the reason we need stomach acid is not to digest food. We don't actually digest with stomach acid. The big thing we do with stomach acid is we actually activate enzyme complexes, especially a substance known as pepsinogen. So with this substance, this is what we use to actually start cleaving apart our proteins, and we also need that stomach acid to help absorb things like iron, for instance, which is a classic one that goes through this area as well. So when we start talking about this, it's protein digestion we're really talking about. So this is where our proteins start their digestive process, which is really key. Then the acid we generate from there ends up getting dumped into our small intestine, which is this area here. And the whole reason we dump that into there is that the stomach acid, when it gets dumped into there, causes the pancreas to release all of its enzymes, and those enzymes are used to break down our vegetable fibers, they're used to break down our carbohydrate, and they're also used to break down both protein and fat as well to an extent. So when we get down into that area, we really need the stomach acid to be dumped into the gut in order to initiate the pancreas to break down those enzyme complexes. Okay, so that's a big quick brief overview. When we start talking about intestine, our large intestine really is our removal place. That's really, we're going to take the last bit of moisture out of it, and we're also going to have very specific probiotics in there to start converting some of these substances like fiber and things like this into very specific nutrients that we actually use. And strangely enough, it's not us that are doing it, it's actually the bacteria that we consume that are doing it, which is very, very different than what most people generally understand. Alright, so why is this understanding this all important for us? Alright, so the reason why it's really important is that when we start talking about carbohydrate in terms of everyday life, really if we're consuming our carbohydrate, really we want to be chewing these carbohydrates because we need to mix it up. We need to get all of that saliva mixed into it in order to initiate digestion. When we start talking about our proteins, really we don't need or really even want that saliva to be completely mixed into the proteins, because all it's going to potentially do is it's not going to initiate digestion. It's just basically going to dump a lot of that stuff into our stomach, and the result of it is potentially dilute our stomach acids and make it really hard for us to digest our protein sources. Okay, so there's a couple little things. So what are some key points from this? Alright, so number one, carb digestion is really occurring in the mouth and the gut, okay? So it's the mouth that our carbohydrate digestion is initiated. You want to better absorb, better digest, better break down carbohydrate-based foods. If you're seeing it coming out the other end, really we need to be chewing more. Chew and chew and chew and really get that saliva mixed in. When it comes to protein digestion, it's the stomach where it's all happening. So that's where we're getting most of our digestion occurring, stomach and then into the gut. So we don't really need to chew our proteins as much. We just need to make them to a size that we can actually consume and it's safe. The actual digestive process itself is all occurring lower down in the gut. And the other thing with this that we need to understand then is that our digestive system generally works much better earlier in the day than it does later in the day. And this has a lot to do with our diurnal rhythms with cortisol and things like this. But our stomach acid levels tend to be higher first thing in the morning, which is why we start talking about societal type thing. Protein is socially acceptable to have in the morning. Like it's okay to have, say, an omelette on its own, or a couple of eggs on its own, or bacon and eggs. It's almost socially acceptable to have just protein in the middle, on the early start of the day. But when we start talking about middle and later parts of the day, it's people get uneasy about it. If lunch was just half a chicken or dinner was just a steak, we feel awkward, but it's fine having just bacon and eggs in the morning. So we know that that whole process seems to somewhat occur from a historical perspective that might have something to do with the fact that our stomach acid levels tend to be highest in the morning. So moral stories with that, we want to have in the morning, consume your larger meals, middle day consume your larger meals. At night, we want to keep it light. We keep it light at night. We don't want the food to be sitting in the gut, rotting and going off all night, okay? So we want to keep our meals small in the evening. We also want to go more towards carbohydrate in the evening and more towards protein in the morning, which means as the day goes on, we're going to be chewing our foods a lot more than what we need to do in the morning, because that carbohydrate that we have in the evening is also really good for serotonin production and other neurotransmitters to help you sleep at night. All right, so what do we do if we have a bloated? If we're getting this gas build-up in the digestive system, how do we approach all this stuff? All right, so here's a few simple key steps that I've seen over the years that have seemed to help a lot of people. So the first one is separate your carbohydrate and your protein. So break your meals up. So have, say, a nice, so you're having, say, a traditional steak and veg, for instance, or protein and veg. Have your protein first, give it a few minutes break, let those stomach acids build up, get that enzyme production happening, and then start consuming our carbohydrate. Just separate them a little bit more. Even separate them totally if you have the opportunity to do so. Chew our carbohydrates. You really need to be chewing our carbohydrates. This is really important. Mix as much saliva into them as you can and you'll get a much better digestive process. And remember, we want to be light at the end of the day. So when we're looking at foods at the end of the day, a lot of people will start getting bloating just because they're eating nuts late at night, or they're basically sitting down with large meals at the end of the day. Once you cross 7 p.m, from what we've seen here, digestion doesn't really happen very effectively at all. So the later you go in the evening, the more likely you are to set off that bloating pattern and start creating more and more issues. Anyway guys, that's a nice little introduction to digestive function. We're going to cover this topic of bloating in some detail. Rob, myself and Michael are going to get together. We're going to give you a whole podcast, good 15-20 minutes just on this topic, so that you can really get some intricate ideas and understanding of what's actually going on with that, especially as it relates to irritable bowel syndrome. So stay tuned for that. That podcast should be out pretty shortly. We'll post it up on our Facebook page and you can access that at your own will and hopefully be widely available for you. Anyway guys, if you have any questions with this at all, you want more information in regards to bloating, what you can do to help it, just post it up. My team's always here to help you. We've always got people here on standby to help you in any way, shape or form that we possibly can. Otherwise, you're always free to message me as well. You can message me directly through our Facebook page. It's BrianWise-Tribuchacuti. But if you don't, then we shall hopefully catch you in the next vid. Bye for now. See you guys.